On March 27th, the 20th Urban Innovation Forum was held in the Guangzhou Library. Jordi Vaquer, Secretary General of the Metropolis, was invited to attend and deliver a keynote speech with the theme Transforming Our World, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and the New Urban Agenda. This forum is being held to promote the concept of urban innovation and the Guangzhou Award to the public. During the event, we are honored to have an interview with Mr. Vaquer to discuss about the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the New Urban Agenda. Hello, Mr. Vaquer.
Hello, good afternoon.
So, as the global urbanization process continues to accelerate, it is estimated that 2.6 billion people will be living in cities by 2023. So what, in your opinion, are the general challenges that large cities and metropolitan areas are currently facing?
So there is three big groups of challenges that the cities have. One has to do with the planet. We are reaching the ecological limits of what the planet can sustain, and cities and urban spaces play a disproportionate part in the use of natural resources, in the creation of ecological challenges, such as carbon, which then produces climate change, or plastics, or pollution, and others. So there is one big group of challenges that are environmental, and they are connected also to the already unfolding effects of the negative activities. For example, we already have problems with water scarcity. We have problems with flooding and others. There's another group of problems that have to do with the social tissue of the cities. The cities are spaces that are becoming of unprecedented size in human history. And inside those cities, we have issues of segregation, discrimination. We have a huge inequality between women and men, other forms of inequality around age, around race, around religion, segregation through economic and other means. So that's a second big group of challenges of the cities. And the third group of challenges has to do with the new ways in which humanity is evolving, the future of labor, the future of technology, the need to make sure that the progress reaches everyone and not only concentrates in the hands of the very few. So these three are the big groups of challenges that cities face nowadays.
Thank you. So furthermore, what are the specific challenges that Asian cities are currently encountering?
So Asian cities are a very, very diverse group of cities. Mm-hmm. You have cities that are booming, that are growing very, very fast, mostly spontaneously, unplanned. And this brings one set of challenges that have to do with the most basic services, with getting people decent housing, for example, and others. Then there's another group of cities which are challenged by the mere size, which is, as I said before, unprecedented in human history, and they need to really create new forms of governance and apply a lot of innovation to govern those spaces in terms of mobility, for example, in terms of urban planning, in terms of managing density, right? And then there is a third kind of cities, which are cities that are stable in population, even shrinking, and that are aging. Their populations are aging very fast. Those are not the problems of growth as we tend to think about in the past, but those are the problems of cities that have to adapt to a new reality of little growth, and of people, more and more elderly people in the cities needing particular street design, particular public services, and others.
Yes, so cities are facing several challenges, and the deadline for the 2030 Agenda is approaching. So to achieve sustainable development, cities need to address multiple challenges. In that case, what actions can cities take and who should they collaborate with?
Right. So the most important and most urgent thing that every city needs to do is to stop quick fixes and start thinking with the long distance future view. Because quick fixes will not address the real depth of problems that cities have at this point, right? In order to reach the SDGs, you cannot go for the next election. You cannot just try to fix the current problem. You really have to rethink the model of your city. Only when cities are going all the way into future mode will they achieve this. And so specifically then, what this means is that cities need to partner in three directions. They need to partner with their own people, their own citizens. They need to involve business. They need to involve civil society in managing the city. Otherwise, there's no way that this will be a sustained effort. Secondly, they need to partner up. They need to look for governments. They need to look for international institutions as partners to solve and contribute to solving their everyday solutions. And they need to partner across with each other. They need to look at best practices. They need to learn from other cities that are already doing this, and they need to cooperate nationally and internationally, because they cannot afford the time to repeat the same mistakes and find the same roads that others have already found.
Yes, thank you. For citizens, what can they do to promote sustainable development in their own cities? And could you give us some examples?
Yes. So there is three levels of action for every citizen. One is individual. There is so much we can do in our everyday life. The citizens, for example, of Bogota in Colombia, or the citizens of Brussels in Belgium have taken to cycling in very large numbers. The active mobility that is avoiding more polluting forms and is going for healthier and less polluting ways of moving is making a difference. Another example of what citizens can do is to reduce waste to the minimum. So Kigali in Rwanda, for example, has for decades lived without plastic bags. No plastic bags at all. Right? The reduction of plastic use and single use of plastics is a huge thing that citizens can do. So that's the first level, individual. Then there's a second level, which is citizens coming together in trying to transform their city. And this has to do a lot more with citizens taking a more central role in the uses of the space around them, in how many trees there should be, in how the streets should be safer and less polluting, in the levels of use, for example, of materials that are not sustainable. That requires the citizens coming together and acting. And then the last level, of course, is citizens need to speak up. They need to go out in the media. They need to go to their governments. They need to demand action be taken. They need to speak to the big polluting industries and say, this is no longer acceptable. They need to be taking their rightful role in moving up one level the change for sustainable development goals.
As we know, Metropolis serves as an international platform for global urban governance and communication, aiming to promote the implementation of SDGs and NUAs at the local level. So in what ways has Metropolis contributed to achieve SDGs and the NUA?
I was talking before about the cooperation, the horizontal cooperation between cities, and Metropolis is the space where this happens. Let me give you some concrete examples. One of the areas in which we are working together at the moment is urban forests, bringing nature back to city. We need to go beyond the old thinking where city and nature were opposite things. We know that's not true. We know the city is eating up into nature. It's depleting its resources. It's changing the weather. It's changing water systems. And now we have to invert this process. We need nature back into the city to start solving these issues. We need trees that will solve the heat island effect. We'll need wetlands that will solve the problem of excessive flooding. We will need corridors so that pollinators and migratory animals can cross the urban spaces rather than be stopped there, right? So that needs to change. Metropolis is organizing the cooperation between Chinese and European, Latin American and other cities together to talk about what are the best way to bring these nature-based solutions.
The 14th General Assembly of Metropolis is scheduled for June. So what can we expect for?
So you need to expect from Brussels a big gathering of global metropolises that will be, in the first instance, raising up their voice. We have a very specific demand. For 5 years now, we've been working with UN Habitat to commemorate World Metropolitan Day on October 7th. This year, we're coming together and we're telling loud and clear to the United Nations, we want this to be an official day in the calendar of the United Nations. You also need to expect a revitalization of the links between cities. For over 3 years now, mobility has not been an option. Learning from cities has moved to the virtual space. This is great. This has opened lots of new opportunities, cheaper, more ecologically sustainable, but sometimes it's not enough, because the learning also happens in study visits, also happens in people-to-people conversation. So what you need, the second thing you need to expect is a revitalization of cooperation among cities.
Yes, thank you. So this year, the 6th Guangzhou Award was launched in Barcelona in February. What are your expectations on the 6th Guangzhou Award?
My first expectation is that this will be an unprecedented edition in terms of number of submissions. We think that the Guangzhou Award has now captured the global imagination, and more cities are now aware that one very good way to have their best practices globally recognized is to be recognized by the Guangzhou Award. Therefore, there is now a boiling interest in the Guangzhou Award.
So as the co-president city of Metropolis, Guangzhou is responsible for Metropolitan Innovation Portfolio and hosts the Metropolis Regional Secretariat for Asia and the Pacific. So what are your expectations for the future cooperation between the Metropolis and Guangzhou?
So the Guangzhou has historically been a pioneer in internationalization and global outreach amongst Chinese cities. And when I say historically, I don't mean only in the 80s. I also mean 1,000 years ago, right? This is a city that in some ways is the dean of Chinese cities as far as international outreach is concerned. This is important for us because the Chinese experience of metropolization, rapid urban growth, planned growth of cities without slums, without major upheavals, is important for the experiences in other parts of the world. We have a whole continent, Africa, that's urbanizing really rapidly with many lessons to be learned. We have other parts of the world, in Latin America and Europe, elsewhere, looking very closely at the innovations of Chinese cities. And one thing that Guangzhou has been good at, and I've seen this happen in Metropolis, is explaining and showing these innovations in ways that other parts of the world are also able to understand and to adapt, right? And so this function is not only about, and you mentioned this, it's a regional secretariat, it's not only about showing the successes of Guangzhou or the Greater Bay Area, it's really about becoming a bridge or a connector with the whole group of Chinese and other East Asian cities and other parts of the world. That's the expectation, and not only the expectation, but actually it's my conviction that we will be working together, shoulder to shoulder with Guangzhou from the Secretariat to achieve this.